From the mysteries of the universe to the mysteries of the unknown, this is Mysterious Realms with Mr. Cyber. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Here is your host, Mr. Cyber.
Well, hello, this is Elijah, aka Mr. Cyber, and welcome to Mysterious Realms. Today we have a great show for you. Our guest, Damien Nott, is with us to discuss UFOs and UAPs. This is a very fascinating topic that I love, and I'm sure most of all of you love as well, and are very intrigued by the whole UFO phenomenon and what it is. And there is a lot of research going on in this field, and if you've been watching the news recently, there's been a lot of discussion and a lot of sightings. Coming up next month in June, of course, we're going to be having the release of the so-called UFO documents that was ordered by President Trump in 2020 when he signed one of the COVID relief bills. So this shall be very interesting to see what comes of it. But our guest, Damien Knott, is going to be talking to us today about his UFO research. So just a little bit about Damien Nott. He was born in Sydney, Australia, and grew up in the western suburbs of Sydney, where he currently resides. His story came to public attention in 2012 after contacting a UFO research organization in an attempt to find an answer to his repeated experiences with the UFO phenomenon. He became and continues to be an avid researcher focusing on this subject. He has appeared in episodes of Ancient Aliens, the documentary Beyond the Spectrum, and has produced and directed the documentary Fractured Realities. He has 2 new films up and coming, Haunted Skies and Fractured Realities, which will be out here soon. So, to get on with the UFO research discussion, it is my honor to have our guest with us today, Damien Knott. Well, hello, Damien.
Thank you for having me on the show. Good morning.
Hey, good morning to you. It's so you're over there in Australia. So you're, like I was chatting with you a little bit ago, you're in my future.
We are, like I said, we are so far backwards here. We are actually in the future. So
for real, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day or morning to be with us here.
Not a problem.
So I just want to go over something really quick. So UFOs are very fascinating nowadays. For quite a while growing up, they were always a very interesting subject and topic. You've had all the movies come out about UFOs and aliens. And then, if you noticed throughout the years, it's become very and a lot more popular. And it's almost like the government or governments are using Hollywood and the film industries throughout the world to slowly trickle this information out. So when they do become public, and they, declassify this, hopefully one day without covering up anything, that we'll sit back and be like, well, we knew these were real, and hence it'll reduce the shock factor. So it's just a very interesting topic, and I wanted to go to you. How did you get started in all of this?
First of all, I had a sighting when I was old, 42 now, so it was quite a while back, 33 years, whatever. It was a red ball of light. Sort of followed me down the road. I was heading back from a friend's house and heading home, and I was a bit late, and I looked above me and I saw a red light, and it was basically when I'd stopped walking, stopped above me. It was maybe 10 to 12, maybe 15 feet. When you're younger, it's hard to get an exact, because you're a bit younger. I'm going by memory. So it would have been maybe 15 feet above me, maybe the size of a basketball, a bit larger. And I remember watching it for a few minutes and it continuing to do the same thing, probably about a minute maximum. But when you have these sightings, they, especially when you're young, they tend to last forever. So, most sightings are short and fleeting UFOs. You see them zip across the sky and that's it, or stop for a few seconds and then take off again. But so, yeah, any sighting over a minute or so is actually quite a long sighting. But I knew I saw something strange. I ran home. I tucked my skateboard under my arm and just ran the rest of the way home. And I remember jumping on the balcony really excited and said to my mum, who was just finishing up dinner, that, I saw this light and it was following me and all this sort of stuff. And my mum said, it was probably an aeroplane. And even at that age, I knew it wasn't an aeroplane. It couldn't be. So I sort of questioned it. But, you believe your parents when you're young. And so I believed her a bit. But there was something in me niggling away. And so I started trying to, it's just my personality, I guess. I started, trying to look into what it was that I saw. And then I found out about UFOs. And so I started borrowing books from the libraries, from friends, from anybody who I can. I get books from, garage sales or whatever. And trying to find out about the subject. And it was, I think, about 3 years later, I read a couple of books from between the ages of 9 and 11, and then it sort of dropped off a little bit. When I was 12, I had a sighting, the same kind of thing with another red ball of light, and it came down from the sky, got bigger and bigger at night time. This one was, though. And I had my brothers with me at the time. We were camping out in the backyard, looking up at the sky, just sitting on top. It's a hot night, a summer night. And this light just came down, and then it started getting chased around the sky by these two other lights. And these other lights was a brilliant blue sphere of light and another yellowy green kind of beautiful color of light were chasing this red light around the sky for about 15 minutes. It was one of the longest sightings I've had to date. And my brothers saw it, my father saw it. And so it was a big thing for me. It sort of cemented what I had seen 3 years earlier, and then kind of made me realize, hey, I've got to look into this deeper. And so at the age of 12 was really when it kicked off for me, more so than 9. And then since then I've been looking into every part of it, trying to read everything I can in the world about it, and watch all the documentaries and know all the cases and all that sort of stuff. And so over my life, I've had probably about 15 sightings up until a decade ago, or 9.5 years ago. And when I moved to a country town called N.S.W, and then from Sydney, and then all of a sudden, the second night I was at the place where I'm at now, I witnessed a white ball of light, probably half the size of a house, moving over the neighbour's house property behind us and directly over their rooftop, and it was so illuminating some roof tiles as it was moving over, and all the dogs in town were going, barking and going mad, and we had cattle on the outskirts of town which were being sold at an auction the following morning, and they all started going crazy because this object was headed towards them, and I lost sight of it, but you could still hear the animals just all over town going crazy. And so since then I started seeing a lot more, and I spent 10 months in the country at that time, a decade ago, and then moved back down to Sydney and started doing talks and presentations about the phenomenon. The people were coming here. We had journalists from the Sun Herald newspaper who came into the backyard and witnessing UFOs themselves. Nearly every investigator who came up here witnessed multiple UFOs in my backyard or out on the farm. And so, like a lot of people saw the phenomenon here. And so people started coming when they put that in the paper that they witnessed UFOs on property here. People were coming from all over Australia to hopefully see these UFOs, and so it was a bit of a crazy experience for a while. And then I started doing went down to Sydney, and I realized what I noticed was that I'd do these presentations or I'd do podcasts or whatever, and I'd see a UFO before or afterwards, which is really, really strange. And other times you can be looking up in the sky for days on end, and not see a thing. And then all of a sudden it's really strange. The phenomenon is really, really out there, and it's not as simple as, extraterrestrials coming from another planet coming here. There's a lot more in-depth, a lot more crazy things happening than what people would assume this phenomenon is actually about.
Well, you know what, Damien? So going back to your childhood, so when you would see something, you knew it wasn't normal. The same thing happened to me when I was a child. Like, you'd see a light, it's automatically an airplane or a helicopter, and your parents would reinforce that because at that age, you really don't have a full grasp on that stuff. But we do know, even as children, okay, this isn't the same as, you know, the airplanes I see flying or the helicopters or whatnot. So something like that is really sticks out. But then as you get older, it's just getting reinforced after, you know, experience after experience, to the point where you know that this is not just an airplane or a helicopter. There's way more to this. Do you believe, and I'll get back to your thing in a second, do you believe the governments throughout the world, Australia, the United States, do you believe they know what these things are, or they're just as intrigued as we are?
I don't believe they know exactly what the phenomenon is, but I know that for a fact that there is an organization which has tentacles in governments around the world. Most people within governments know nothing about this phenomenon whatsoever, but there is an organization, some call it the Men in Black because we have no other name for it at the time being. But there is some sort of organization that does have tentacles in every country, especially Western countries where the phenomenon is reported a lot. And yes, I do believe that while most people in governments have no idea about the phenomenon, and it's because it's been, you know, rubbished and ridiculed for years as well by governments and by certain organizations within governments to try and keep the interest in it, the public interest in it, down to a bare minimum. And so because of this, you know, it's enabled us to continue on being good little slaves and good little taxpayers and, you know, and not question anything, just continue to do what we do and make the government lots of money. And that's the whole thing. They did a study back in the 70s about in regards to what may happen if the UFO phenomenon is actually revealed to the public. And, you know, they said that back then, you know, they believed that religious organizations would crash. People would stay home. They wouldn't want to go to work. They'd arm themselves. They'd be afraid of a Martian invasion. You know, the whole kit. So, I mean, they did kind of a trial in regards to it years ago as well, where they spoke on the radio and they actually spoke about so it was a real event happening that they were being, but it was a play, you know, but people were listening to it, believing it was real, believing that Martians were attacking. And so people were actually, and this is just in one small part of New York, people were leaving their homes. People were, you know, looting. People were doing all sorts of things. So that was a good test on back then on how people would react to the UFO phenomenon. But today, I believe, because we are more of an open-minded kind of race now, where and because of the internet, because of the proliferation of UFO sightings around the world, and the fact that anybody can, you know, put their mobile phone camera up to the sky and actually film the phenomenon now, you know, it's gotten to a point where they can't actually continue to deny it anymore. So that there is ways where that they are trying to slowly disclose it through a couple of groups that are separate from this other group that I was just previously speaking about, and they want it out, but not through the actual government now. It's coming out through a group called AAPI, with Tom DeLonge and all that. So basically ex-government agents, ex-government spooks, with a public face that, you know, people will believe, i.e. Blink-182's Tom DeLonge.
Yep.
And so it kind of takes it out of the government's hands and puts it into the public hands in that respect. And it sort of takes the onus away from the government, because for years, I mean, the government's been rubbishing and ridiculing people who see the phenomenon and witness it. And they have used Hollywood, and they've used documentaries and movies and stuff to reinforce the giggle factor regarding UFOs, because when you hear the term UFO, most people think alien straight away. And when you think alien, you think, oh, anal probing and, you know, just silly things like that, right?
Yeah.
And this comes hand in hand, and most people think that, and that's been a carefully manufactured thing. So they can't actually come out and say, okay, well, we're going to reveal the truth to the public, even though we've rubbished it for many years. We've studied it that many times and told the public that there's nothing to it. And what's with them coming out now and saying there is something to it? I think it's about 4 months' time or 3 months' time or whatever. Not long away, there's a release from your government over there.
Oh, well, that's actually coming next month. And,
Next month. Oh,
yeah, that's not, I still get it confused because it was just February the other day, and then it's already going on June next month. So yeah, I mean, the last time I thought about it was 3 to 4 months out. Now I'm like, gosh, it's going on.
time's gone so fast.
Yeah, but see, so when I opened up, I was talking about that when I was introducing you about the whole trickling out of information. In the back of my mind, I was like, they're going to slowly trickle this out in movies and information. But as technology advances with the internet, cell phones, like what you were saying, it's going to get to the point where this is going to become controlled more by the public than the government, because we see everything just like the government does. We may not have access to the classified information, but I'm like, you can't hide something that's in the sky. And
well, that's right. That's right.
And I think it's going to get to the point where we're like, okay, governments, quit being stupid. We already know what's up. But I just find it absolutely fascinating. But next month, what gets me, because, so last year, one of the COVID relief bills that was signed here by President Trump, included in that bill was the release of these classified documents regarding the whole UFO phenomenon, etc. But I've always wondered, and I think we all know this as well, how much is really going to get declassified, because the people that are holding this are the same ones that are going to be letting it out. So I always wonder, how much are they going to release, because the Navy, the United States Navy already came out saying, yeah, we've seen these. The Pentagon just confirmed it the other week. Yes, we can validate these videos are real of these UFOs or these unknown objects in the sky. The question is, to what extent, and are we going to be let down next month with this release? That's what I'm.
Yeah, I believe that you're asking a very apt question there, because in the past, where there's been freedom of information requests put through after 50 years of secrecy, and they've released the reports of these so-called brilliant UFO reports. Most of the information is redacted. It's covered with black texture, so you don't actually get to see the juicy parts. You just see one little part, and then black. It's all blackened out, and then you're like, oh, so you don't really. Who knows what we're going to be getting? Who knows what they're going to be hiding? Who knows what they're going to be? Because at the same time, I don't believe they're going to want to. They need to put their hand in at the moment and say, okay, well, look, here's what we know. But at the same time, they could release stuff which makes a joke out of the subject as well, or they could do more damage to the topic. It depends how they handle this. But at the same time, like you're saying, it's going into the hands of the public, because 50 years ago, not everyone had cameras on them, and now everyone has a camera in their pocket.
Oh yeah.
So the truth and the reality of the phenomenon is becoming more and more undeniable every single day. I'm getting about 10 to 15 reports from around the world of UFOs nearly every second day, that people are seeing these things, and they're speaking about pretty much the same type of objects doing very similar things in the sky, or diving into the ground, doing bizarre things like that, into the ocean. It's really strange. So when I started, when I came up to the country here 10 years ago, when I started seeing them, and I realized, hey, these things are actually getting closer now. They're actually quite close. So I started buying cameras to film them, and so I started filming them all the time. So wherever I move to, I tend to be lucky enough to film these things in the sky. And it's a bit hard to explain why or how, but it's just they're just around, and there's a high strangeness to the phenomenon as well.
Yeah,
and that's a little side part of it that not many people really experience or know about. And it's almost like with my upcoming documentary, Haunted Skies, I'm doing it with a Forteana expert. Mike Williams is a friend of mine. He's been in my case for 10 years now, and he's seen a lot of these things around me. He's seen them flying to the earth right next to my arm, like very, very strange sightings that he and other weird things too, like batteries going flat when UFOs are around, memory cards wiping themselves, while you're filming them. other times you start filming and it'll start recording, and then you put it up to your eye to film it, and you're thinking you're getting the best UFO footage in history. And then you look back at the footage and it only records for 1 second.
Oh, that's annoying.
And you're like, what? How did that happen? Yeah, it is. It can be. It can be. So, it's happened multiple times, but I've been lucky now. There's another, I think, 5 more documentaries coming out that I'm in this year. 2 of them I'm making myself, and I think it's 3 out of the 5 we've had UFOs show up for during the making of the documentary.
Wow.
And that's never happened before. 2 of the documentaries I've been involved in already, 2 out of the 3. 3 out of the 4 we've had UFOs show up already in the making of the documentary, like Australian Skies. Another Canadian documentary, it's due out this year. We had a UFO show up straight after I did a presentation up at the Gold Coast up in Queensland, and it was we're about 7 stories up thereabouts on a building in a massive hotel, and we're overlooking, there's a whole big city area, high-rise buildings all over the place, and I'm looking through a thermal camera for the first time ever, directly straight out, on this big rig kind of thing, and straight out over the balcony. And then I'm looking, and then all of a sudden, straight away, I see this thing just hovering there on the other end, and it was an old school flying saucer with a tiny little dome on top, not a big dome or anything, but really long, elongated sides to it, rounded edges, and fully flat bottom. And, and it's just sitting there, and I thought the guys were, the documentary crew were playing a joke on me. and they had a sticker, they stuck something on the other end of the lens or something, and so I'm there with my finger reaching around trying to see if there's anything on the lens, and then all of a sudden this thing starts moving, and I'm like, what? No way. So I told the guy, I said, yeah, look, you're going to want to film this because and he had a look, he saw it, he's like, oh wow. So I saw him recording and starting to film and everything, and then this thing, it's going between 2 high-rise buildings and then went out to the ocean really slowly. You couldn't see it with the naked eye. You could only pick it up with a thermal camera, so it's giving off a heat source.
Yeah.
And we tried filming it with infrared as well at the same time, with normal 4K cameras. Couldn't see a thing, but it was showing up in the thermal, showing a thermal signature basically. And so yeah, it disappeared. And we're thinking again, we've got the best UFO footage in history. This is incredible. And then they've come back down to my hotel room after I did the presentation and everything, and they said, "You're not going to believe this." I'm like, "What?" And they go, "Well, have a look." And so they put it in the memory card, and what's happened was for some reason it didn't record properly. All it recorded was the audio and not the video, and there was a lot of static interference on the actual video part of it itself. And the documentary crew and the guy who owned it was a $70,000 thermal camera, so it wasn't a cheap thermal camera. And this was 5 years ago, and that was brought over from Canada. And
that's not cheap by any means. Wow.
No. They've never had that happen before, and to this day they've never had it happen since, where they've recorded and it hasn't recorded the video part, it's only recorded the audio. Now this happens time and time again in the UFO phenomenon. So it's like some of these objects want you to film them and some of them don't. So it's either that or it's some field around them which is inadvertently messing with electronics basically.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, it's either one or the other. Sometimes it feels like they're doing it on purpose. Other times it's like, okay, well, it could be an accident of some description, but it does feel like it's on purpose.
Well, we've had similar stories I'm sure you've heard of with like nuclear reactors, missile silos, things like that, where people say, hey, there was a flying object hovering over these silos or these nuclear reactors, and it just got shut down. And it always coincided with these objects that were flying. And that comes to one of my other questions. What are the different types of UAPs and UFOs we have operating in our skies? I know there has to be a vast amount of different kinds. What have you encountered, or through your research, what have you come up with?
Yeah, good question. They have, there's different types all around the world, but you have your main type of UFOs, or UAP as they're called nowadays. You have your BOL type, ball of light type UFOs. I call them BOLs. and they're just a different subtype of UAP. But basically they're the ones that are reported and seen the most around the world. Are basically spheres of light, different sizes, at different colors. And so you have your most predominant, you have your white ball of light, which is the most predominant. Then you have your orange, and you have your reds, and you have your greens and your blues, and all these other little multitudes of colors. But, they're very, very unusual. So it goes from, the white, which is the most seen, to the, right the way down to the blue balls of light, which are quite rare. And you've got green as well. And but they're incredible. But the different objects seem have different characteristics, and do different things in the sky, which is very unusual. The red ones seem to get lower and follow humans. There was a case, like with my case, went back when I was 9 and had this, and then again 12 with these red balls of light that would come down. There was a case in Germany in the 15th century where a gentleman was walking into town, and he was walking over a bridge, and he happened to look up, and he witnessed one of these balls of light, these red ones, just hovering above him, and it was doing the same thing to this gentleman as this. So it was basically mimicking his movements. He'd stop walking, the ball would stop. He'd continue walking, the ball would follow him. And he'd stop again, the ball would stop instantly, like it was mimicking his movements. And exactly the way I've described my sighting for the last, decade, and anyone who knows me for much longer. But I found out about that just recently in a book called Wonders of the Sky, Wonders in the Sky, by Jacques Vallée and Chris Aubeck, and actually spoke about it. And I nearly jumped out of my seat. I was like, oh wow, that's exactly what I saw. And then you've got your white ones, and white ones tend to follow aeroplanes, and like with the Foo Fighters back in the day, back in World War II.
Yeah.
And also the red ones do also mimic and follow aeroplanes. I've had a couple reports from airline pilots, one over in America too, who had a red ball of light following his plane, and he was doing little S maneuvers, just trying to sort of to see what this thing would do, if it would just leave him alone or whatever. But it was mimicking his little maneuvers.
Oh, that's so weird. Wow.
Yeah. He was just doing little turns left and right, which you're allowed to do without contacting the flight control.
Yeah.
And, but if he was to do like a different maneuver, like a turn around or something like that, he'd have to contact them. But this thing was mimicking his movements, and everyone in saw it. There was people on the plane saw it. There was the cabin crew saw it. So yeah, it's really strange. These things, but then you got cigar type objects, long white, brilliant white things that sometimes give off little balls of light, smaller balls of light come out of them, and they fly around the sky. Then some of them break off in 2s or 3s or 4s, the balls of light. Very unusual phenomenon. It's very strange. What's not reported as much nowadays, though, is the flying saucer type UFO. They're actually quite rare. During my life, I've probably seen 3 out of maybe about 300 sightings.
Yeah.
So they're actually quite rare. But
why do you think that's going that direction, where we're seeing more of these different types of UFOs? Because I know the most common one that the average person thinks of is the flying saucer or the disc-shaped UFO. Why do you think we're seeing more of these different types now versus when we have, or do you think we've always seen them, but everyone's just like, well, this is easier to explain, a saucer type shape versus some confusing shape?
Yeah, I think we've always seen them. I know the balls of light have been spoken about going back centuries. But then also you've got the saucer type ones, which, there's chapters basically where the Romans, 2,000 years ago spoke about these things. And they described them as burning shields, which would fly across the sky, because that's all they knew back then to describe them as, or chariot wheels or something like this, So I think they've been with us for a long, long time now. But I think also nowadays you got the factor that more people are looking up, more people are interested in the phenomenon. And also now you've got governments speaking more openly about it too, which has kind of taken the ridicule factor out of it a little bit. And the more respected people who speak up about it, the less it will be ridiculed. But I think it's probably a combination of things. Some people think that, like, back in the day that there were some interplanetary craft coming, and these interplanetary craft were the flying saucer type things, more so than the balls of light, which have been with us all the way through. But I think that, we've been visited, not just visited, but I think they're all around us at different times. I think it's an interdimensional thing, even though that's a human term. I hate using it, but they seem to come from the same place, wherever they are. And I don't believe it's, some planet off, off in the Pleiades or something like this. I think that, because of the high strangeness and because of the fact that, we can see them we can pick them up on EMF meters and also other phenomenon as well on the Earth, like ghost phenomenon. I'm not sure if you believe in that, but that seems to have a similar type of.
I do believe in the ghost phenomena.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I've seen enough now to know that, that does exist. And what I found is, with people like myself who've seen a lot of the UFOs, we also tend to have a lot of strange paranormal phenomenon happen as well, which is really bizarre. And that goes back in history as well, where there's been, repeated sightings over to small towns or whatnot, and then of UFOs or balls of light or whatever. And then, at the same time down in the town, people will be having weird things happening in their homes, like poltergeist phenomenon, things flying about, all sorts of strange, weird apparitions, and while people are seeing balls of light. So what I say is, a good analogy is, if you're a ghost hunter and you see a ball of light in a home, you're going to say or think it's a ghost. If you're a farmer and you see a ball of light on your property, you're going to think it's a min light, or that's what we call mystery lights.
Yeah.
Like North Texas over there. And then if you're a ufologist and you look up in the sky and see the same ball of light, you're going to call it a UFO. Now, are they the same? Are they similar? Or I believe they are, and I believe that they're coming from a similar place because they both give off the same readings. They both can be seen in the infrared and the ultraviolet spectrum on occasions when they can't be seen with the naked eye. And also, that they both trigger the magnetometers, the tri-field meters. They both break the Earth's magnetic field and affect it when they're around, especially the localized magnetic field. So whatever they are, they seem to be coming from the same place. They both have effects on equipment, like we were speaking about before. They both can shut down memory cards, batteries, one after the other. All sorts of strange things like that. They both affect animals. Both of the phenomenon. There's so many similarities. So in Haunted Skies, we've come up with 28 different links between the different phenomenon witnessed here on Earth and witnessed just above our heads. So whether or not it's related or not, who knows? But I'm putting it out there because I believe that it has something. There's enough points to show that there are some connections, some definite viable connections there.
Well, you know what? Now, I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking, everyone's like, oh, aliens come from all these different planets. Do I think there's other life out there? Of course. But I've always thought in the back of my mind, the way these things act, it's like they're just passing through, jumping in and out of from other dimensions. Because I know there's other dimensions, and science already knows it. And it's they've already proven it that other dimensions do exist that we cannot see or comprehend. Do you think these craft or whatever they are jumping in and out of our dimension? That's why sometimes we just see them vanish or appear. What's your take on that?
Absolutely. You're 100% correct. I believe that when they do come in, they're coming from whatever other dimension that exists around us. I've also got my own theory about that as well. I believe that what scientists know as dark matter, which they don't know exactly what it is, but they know that it surrounds, 80+% of the universe.
Oh, yeah.
We can't measure it, but it's around us. They can work out, sort of that it's there, but they don't have exact equipment or anything. But at the same time, I believe that that's where these other dimensions lay in this dark matter that's all around us. And I think, I'm pretty sure that in the future they'll work that out, if they haven't already, because they definitely are coming from a strange place. They're not just jumping here from, Alpha Centauri, a planet there, and just coming to check us out. Why would they continue to do that, if they've been observing us for this long, which they have, because there is an observance role taking place with very limited. They don't tend to stick their toes in the water too much. It's almost like with a scientist here on Earth, if you're creating bacteria in a petri dish, you don't go and live with the bacteria in the petri dish. You observe it from afar, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You keep an eye on it, and so it's almost like if we are created by something, then it would kind of make sense that they would watch us and keep an eye on us every now and then, possibly when it comes to, with us playing up with nuclear weapons and that, they might, give us a bit of a kick in the butt and say, hey, look, we don't appreciate that, and shut down some weapons here and there, or turn some weapons on, some countdowns, just to freak out some humans, and just to let us know that hey, we don't really like what you're doing here, but who knows? But it seems like they can't really interfere too much, whatever it is.
I've always. I'm sorry, Damien. Go ahead.
No, you're right. I was just going to say there is the zoo hypothesis where they spoke about why aliens aren't visiting us, and the reason why they're not landing on the White House lawn and saying we're here, and that really touches on it well, and it goes into the whole observance role as well, and that they want us to, at our own pace, kind of try and grow as a species and advance ourselves technologically wise and everything. And so I believe that they're definitely watching us. That's for sure.
Well, I've always looked at it like this though, Damien. This might be a bad analogy, but I can't really think of anything else. It's like when you look at the ground and you see a bunch of ants, okay? You can see the ants. You can kind of mess with them a little bit. But the ants, they see you, but they don't really comprehend what we are. That's the only thing I can put it into that kind of perspective, because we're so much more knowledgeable than ants. Ants are knowledgeable, but not like us. We're far superior in a whole different species. That's how I kind of picture from a viewpoint between us and the extraterrestrials, that kind of relationship, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, I've used a similar analogy before about an anthill, and about how we're sort of the ants in the anthill, and they're looking down at, they don't really care too much about us, and we don't really understand them. But at the same time, because they may be like millions of years advanced more than us, time may be nothing. Time may be just a human construct, and it may be nothing to them. They may be immortal, or they may live forever, whatever the case is. But I think that the anthill one is a good one, because it is like a lot of them don't, like I said, they observe and they don't sort of interfere too much. But it's the same thing with us in an anthill. We don't go and then, unless you're a kid and you want to like kill some ants and muck around or whatever. But we don't. If we see an anthill, we don't go and start kicking it and killing all the ants. We just sort of let them be, because we understand that's what they are, and they've got to do what they've got to do, and they bite, so you keep away. So yeah. It's just the same with us humans here, right? Like if one was to land on like an alien, right? Just say an alien was to land on the White House lawn, like all the skeptics used to say, why don't they do that? Well, why would they do that? If they've been watching us for any significant amount of time, they'd realize how violent and how crazy our species is.
Yeah.
They wouldn't come anywhere near us. It's like, why would they? The way we treat our own species, we rape and murder and steal and all this sort of stuff towards our own species. Anyone who looks different, we treat them like rubbish in life. You know what I mean? Like it's just different races. We don't get along well with each other. So what's the chances of us, seeing two aliens land on the White House lawn and not shoot them straight away because they're so different?
Well, that's true. Well, and I really don't.
In America with the guns,
No, no kidding. And I guarantee you, aliens really don't give a shit about landing on the White House lawn.
I wouldn't see why they'd want to, because there's probably not half a brain cell in the White House at the moment.
Yeah, no kidding. No, you ain't lying. You ain't lying. It's true. And if I was an alien, I'd be like, there has to be better places to land. Like, just hover above, well, I don't know, go anywhere else where there's a ton of people. There's a lot of people around the White House, but it's.
One of the things about the UFO phenomenon is the when they come, now they seem to come when there's times of struggle in humanity. They seem to come more in waves when there's times of conflict, and also like when military get together and they do their little war games in certain areas. Like with the Russians, a couple of years ago, one of the generals came out and said that whenever they get together and do their little war game scenarios, a couple times a year, he said guaranteed about 90% of the time they'll see UFOs. Balls of light will come down from the sky and almost observe what they're doing. And this has happened throughout history, in wars, in plagues, in all sorts of things like that, where they've come down and they're seeing more than other times. Now, who knows why that is, but they must know what's happening on Earth for this to happen. It's like with the coronavirus. People ask, why are UFO sightings going through the roof at the moment? And they are, because the reports that I've been getting since coronavirus started have been insane. And whether that's because more people are home now and they can go to their windows and look up, just randomly and see something, or they're watching more documentaries on the internet because they're bored about the subject and it's opening them up more. Who knows? It might be a whole bunch of things, but I think it's also because of the fact that they do seem to come at times of human conflict and struggle. So that is very strange in itself. That almost shows a definite observance role in what we're doing, and some sort of keen interest as well in what's happening here on this planet.
Indeed. And can you, I know the upcoming documentary Fractured Realities Part 2. Can you explain a little bit what that covers for our audience?
Yes. Sure. Well, Fractured Realities Part 1 went into a little bit of my backstory, showed a few witnesses who've seen many UFOs with me over the years, and that. Part 2 is going into more of the what I've learnt about the UFOs, more about their characteristics, the different types of UFOs in the sky. I'll be showing, footage, video, photographs to back that up, the different types of UFOs. There's a lot of strange ones that have been seen, but you've got your main, like we were speaking about before, you have your main varieties of UAP or UFO, like the balls of light and the cigar-shaped objects. Every now and then you get, reports of like Delta Wing craft, but they're mostly from America. These not pyramid-shaped ones, triangle-shaped UFOs, mostly from America. We rarely get reports of them down here, which is unusual, which kind of makes me think that there might be some sort of government project with the big triangle kind of thing up in America, but it's hard to say, but yeah, we rarely see that down here. I've never seen one in my life down in Australia here, but that's not to say that they haven't been reported or seen down here. I have had a couple of reports from over in Western Australia of triangle shaped craft, but yeah, there's so many of them out there. So this documentary will be going into that, what we were talking about before, touching on speaking also other witnesses too who've seen them, and who will be talking about their little experiences with them as well, and stuff like that. So yeah, that's part 2, and then there'll be a part 3 after that, but also Haunted Skies is coming out soon too. That'll be going into the connections between paranormal phenomenon and also the UFO UAP phenomenon, if any, but we'll be showing some definite connections, some scientific, some possibly coincidental.
Yeah.
But definitely, something to make people think, and, really, really think. As it's going from my own experiences. Look, if you'd asked me 33 years ago, I was 9, what I saw, I'd probably say, it was an alien from Mars, right? Little green man, or the green guy from Mars or something, right? But ask me now, and truthfully, I can't tell you what they are. And people want an answer. Right?
Oh, I know that people are so desperate, Damien. They're really freaking desperate. And I don't want to cut you off. There's a little thing I want to tell you. So my dad, he always laughed. He was like, yeah, they're just military planes. Because going back years ago, when they were creating the B-2 bomber or the F-117 stealth fighter, those are triangle shaped. And people were like, oh, it's a UFO. Then it came out as a plane. But see, the objects we see now, our technology cannot compare with it. And the reason I brought up with my dad, because he was always like, yeah. Well, one night, because he lives on the East Coast in North Carolina, and I'm on the West Coast out here, and he was sitting on a lake with some friends, and it was in the evening. It was still light out, of course, and they look up, and they see these lights dancing in the sky. And the odd thing is, he was like, they were dancing, doing maneuvers. None of our flying planes are, we have nothing that can do this and perform these maneuvers. But he said something that you just brought up a little bit ago. You have this main object, but then you had these little balls dancing, and they would regroup, become one, and then they'd scatter out again and just do all these formations that, I'm like, the speed, the quietness, the maneuvers. We can't do that. Then all of a sudden he said, bam, they vanished just like that. And they were all sitting around the lake, and none of them, they all looked at each other like, did you see that? And the others were like, yep. But they didn't say nothing because at the time, a lot of them were commissioners for the government. and you don't want to sound crazy, so they really couldn't, you're not going to say nothing most of the time. But I talked to my dad about that. He said, what I can finally tell you and admit to you now is I will admit something's out there that we do not know. But this was the realest thing that he has ever seen. And when he told me that, Damien, I was blown away. I've seen things in the sky, but nothing of that magnitude that he saw. And my dad's the most honest guy. He's so blunt. Yeah. I'm like, there ain't no way he's making this up, because you could just hear it.
Yeah, you can with people. Yeah. It's something intrinsically linked, like with humans. You can tell mostly when someone's telling the truth about something. And I know when I get reports, I know, like when someone's making up something, and probably because I've had a decade of them now, and, people telling me about stuff, and people trying to convince me that they're special because they've seen UFOs and stuff like that. And people have got to get that out of their heads. Because unfortunately the new age UFO community has really infiltrated ufology over the past 15 years and almost destroyed it to a point where, it's all about, reptilians, and it's all about conspiracies, and it's all about love and light, and, and all this kind of stuff. It's just become not about the subject now. It's become just almost like a joke. And so for the years I've tried to, with my website and everything, I tried to show people what misidentifications were in the sky, because a lot of stuff that I'd get sent were just basically insects, flying past the camera, or birds or something like this, and it'll show up in one photo, and people will be like, oh, okay, well, and honestly, they'd honestly think that, oh, they've caught something really strange, and it's just moving so quick. But the reality is, so I started looking into that, and it caught me out a couple of times first. A decade ago, when I started looking into the camera work and photography, and started picking up cameras and doing all that sort of stuff. So over the years, I've invested in over 60 cameras, and gone out myself and actually tried to, photograph these orbs that I get sent, the moisture orbs and the dust orbs and all this sort of stuff that, to show people that, hey, no, that it's actually something benign and normal.
Yeah.
And because stuff like that kind of rubbishes and ridicules the whole thing when you've got people showing things like that as, aliens, and calling them extraterrestrials and stuff like that. And when the footage gets proved to be not real, or it's this or it's something else, it's like another nail in the coffin for ufology in the public's eye. And this has happened time and time again in the history of ufology. Big sightings have been debunked, and then all of a sudden it's like, what more can, like the Phoenix Lights and other ones like that, massive sightings, which should have really made a massive indent in the world's beliefs system. But look, what I say to everybody, who doesn't believe, don't take anyone's word for it. Have an open mind, of course, but at the end of the day, you need to see the phenomenon with your own eyes to really believe it. And that's what I found true myself, especially with people, So what I do, I invite people up, groups who've come from around Australia and around the world, and hang with me. And, so now I've had, I think, just 203 now. It's gone over to witnesses to UFOs with me wherever I've been, whether it be here in New South Wales or up in Queensland or down south or wherever. So I've been lucky in that respect, and that'll help too. That'll spread out, because the more people who see the UFOs, they'll tell their friends, and their friends will look up in the sky and they might see it, and then it sort of grows. It's like it's like a vegetable garden kind of thing. It kind of just grows naturally, organically, and and I think that's what's happening nowadays too.
Yeah,
a lot more people accepting the phenomenon than used to. And you've got a younger generation too that are probably more open to it as well now, and the older generation too are a lot more closed to it, or wouldn't speak about it, fear of ridicule or whatever.
Well, the thing oh, sorry, Damien.
That's right. I was just going to say, yeah, they're sort of dropping off, where you got the newer ages and the Gen X's and Gen Y's and Gen Z's all coming now, and so yeah, no, it's all changing, which is good. Well,
what gets me, and I think things are going to start coming out, because as you notice, this is worldwide. I guarantee it's the same in Australian culture as it is with ours. The younger generation now, they're very blunt. If you notice, they're very open. They're like, they don't care. Like, they're easily offended by stuff. Let's just say they're that honest. Okay. But the benefits of that in regards to at least UFOs, if they see something like that, they're going to bring it up. And they're going to be like, oh no, we saw this. What do you call me, a liar? So I think that's at least a positive thing with this up and coming generation, is they're more open and they say what they say.
Unless they start canceling out the UFOs.
I know. Don't call them aliens.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm so without going into politics, I'm sick of that nonsense, man. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's so annoying.
Totally.
Hey, so can you
do another whole podcast on politics?
I know we could. Oh my gosh, don't get me started. Because it's no different in Australia than it is here, man. It's exactly the same.
Yeah, it's all around the world. Change is happening everywhere.
Oh gosh,
whether it be good or bad, just got to roll with the punches, I guess. At the end of the day, that's all what we can do.
You do. That's absolutely right. So can you go over, this is really fascinating, your close experience with the purple UAP, which apparently left you really sick, including some sleep paralysis. Can you go over that for our audience? Because I found that very fascinating, including some of the photos that I got that show look like horrible boils on your arms. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. I had in the place I was living down in Sydney, I converted the garage, double garage, to an office. So I'd make documentaries out there, and I'd work on the computer and do stuff like that. Get the sightings reports, work on the website, and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes I'd stay up to 3 a.m. in the morning working, and so this one particular morning, or late one night, I've got up and had a bit of a break to stretch my back, got out of the seat, went to the door, and I've looked up and my dog's next to me. I've looked up and all of a sudden, just above the tree, it was a very low tree just next to me, and right above the tree was a ball of light, was purple, probably about the size of a basketball, maybe a little bit bigger, and it was just sitting there, like sort of bobbing up and down just a tiny little bit, and then it had like a whitish purple center, which was radiating out to like a darker kind of, but beautiful, really beautiful purple sort of exterior, which was like darker. It's the best way I can describe it. And it was just sitting there, and the whole thing, like within about 5 to 7 seconds of witnessing it, and my dog's just sitting there, not even barking at it or anything. Sometimes he barks at him, sometimes he doesn't, but just sitting there, and all of a sudden this bright white light went off, and I was wondering what the hell happened. So I held my arm up in front of my eyes because I felt my eyes sting for a second. So just out of one of those things that you do to sort of block if you see something bright, I guess it was just a random instinct. And as I didn't think much of it, the light disappeared, it was gone. And my eyes were a little bit stingy afterwards. I was really tired. But I thought nothing much more of it. I was just like, oh, how's that? And I was talking to my dog about it afterwards, saying, oh, how was that sighting, Ruffy? That was a good one, nice and close. And it was gone. The whole thing lasted just not long at all. And it was very quick. Anyway, I woke up the following morning, and my partner at the time said, she said, "Oh, have a look at yourself, have a look at your face, like in the mirror." And I'm like, "What?" And I went and had a look, and sure enough, like I was white as a ghost. I looked so ill. My bottom eyelids were burnt right down to the skin. My eyelashes, sorry, were burnt right down to the skin with big red puffy marks under my eyes. And my face was had like these red welts all over it. And I was just like, "Oh wow, what's the hell?" Like, I look like something out of a horror movie, you know. And so I started taking pictures straight away, and I was like, at first I didn't even link it to the object I saw the night before, and that might have been about 10 to 12 to 15 feet away from me, so it was pretty close. But the sighting was really quick, and I didn't think much of it. But after about maybe a week, I noticed this red mark that appeared on my left arm, right where I'd held it up in front of my eyes. And it appeared there, and then it started getting worse and worse and more red over the week and a half thereabouts. And after about maybe, I think, nearly 2 weeks, it started to blister. But previously, there was no pain, there was nothing like that. There was no indication that it was burnt. You could only see like a red mark on my arm, and it covered like a good swath of my left arm. And anyway, so I was just like, okay, well, that's really bizarre. This is really strange. Normally, if you get a sunburn or something like that, you feel it, you can touch it, and your skin's a bit tender, right? But nothing, no pain at all. And so I was like, okay, this is really strange. But then after it started blistering, I started seizuring, and my dog started seizuring too at the same time.
Your dog started seizuring?
Yeah, I had to put him down eventually because it was just terrible seeing him in that state, constantly seizuring, and I'm there up with him like at nights trying to make sure he's okay. And it got to the point where he was having the seizures far greater than I was. And one of the seizures I had, while my arm was still like blistering up, when it first started blistering, I fell backwards in front of my partner and her father, and fell on the floor and broke my back in 3 places. And 3 compression fractures, really bad ones. And so that put me out of action for a little while. And but then we spent 7 months going to multiple skin specialists, trying to work out what it was on my arm, what happened. Because after about 3.5 weeks or 3 weeks or something, the blisters all popped. They formed these big green blisters on my arm, green yellow blisters. And then they all just popped. No doctor. And then it left really bad scarring all up my arm. And it looks a lot better now. A lot of the redness has gone away, but it caused a lot of damage. And then I could feel pain after the blisters popped because the skin was exposed to the oxygen, to the air.
Yep.
And it was like basically, a big nasty looking wound. And so, the best that the skincare specialist could come up with was that they were asking whether I've been to an island north of Australia, which might have had some bacteria on it, and I'd caught bacteria on my arm or something.
Oh,
and like, no, I haven't been to any island. It's some rare island with and rubbed bacteria on my arm or something. No, that was the best they could come up with. Nobody could tell me what it was in 7 months. Professors, specialists, nothing. And the fact that it coincided with seizures, it coincided with my dog's seizures at the same time.
That's so strange, Damien. Wow.
But the weirdest part about that experience for me was just behind me in the door, at the angle, I had a cupboard kind of thing, and on top of the cupboard there was a bunch of DVD, Blu-ray movies, right, just sort of sitting there in a pile. And because after I broke my back, I couldn't really do much work or anything for a little while, so I was laid up. So I thought, hey, I'll watch a movie or something. And sure enough, when we got the movies from this stack, the movies inside the case were melted. The actual discs were like melted inside the case without the exterior case being affected whatsoever, almost like some type of microwave radiation. Now, the thing that we noticed as well was, on the night that the actual event happened, I was wearing a jacket because it was a cold night, a thick jacket, and whatever it was, this energy was or whatever, had burnt me through my jacket without affecting the jacket on the outside in any way, shape, or form. Now, I know of nothing that can do that.
The only thing I can think of is a high-powered beam of radiation, but even that would have an effect. If it's such high power, like that would start burning material as well, you would think.
You would think. It's almost, to me, it almost come across like a type of microwave radiation, like a microwave energy, because it burnt the discs inside the case without affecting the exterior case, and it burnt my arm through the jacket without affecting the jacket in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, that is too weird.
The only way it is, man. It's the only way that I can describe it. So it was really strange, and to this day, I still have no explanation for it. And but to top it off, they found out that they did bone density scans on me. They found out that I have that I developed osteoporosis at the age of 39 when it happened, or 40 when it happened, which is extraordinarily rare.
Yeah.
But then when I started asking the professor, because we looked into it more, and this thing, it turned out it's HO, which is hypophosphatemic osteomalacia, which can be caused by exposure to radiation. So my bones got so brittle and weak that my back broke. So whatever it was stopped my bones absorbing calcium from my body. And so it affected me in not just headaches, migraines, seizures, a whole bunch of other things, affected my skin. It dried my skin out, actually. But it also, it affected my bones. So, and HO, hypophosphatemic osteomalacia, one of the main causes is exposure to radiation. A lot of people during the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings were getting the same bone disease years afterwards, their exposure. Now, one of the specialists, the bone specialists who looked at it and looked at my broken back, said that there were existing fractures that were already there. So there was a chance I'd already had this rare bone disease well and truly before that event, because I've had other UFOs that have come up close to me. I've had ones that have flown into the ground next to my arm that have been seen by multiple people, all sorts of things like that. So I've had them come up close. So whether or not it was caused by that one event or whatnot, but this bone specialist seemed to think that it was a pre-existing condition, my broken back. So me falling and having that seizure kind of just brought it back again and whatever. And so I actually had a sore back for years and I didn't realize why. So now that's a good possibility. I was been walking around with a busted back for years. So,
wow.
You wouldn't know, so it's probably that event too, which kind of pushed the bone thing over the edge and everything like that.
Oh, so, I'm sure the UFO thing did play a huge factor in at least probably enhancing it and bringing it to the surface. That's all I can think of.
Well, one good thing that did come of that whole event was the fact that I wouldn't have found out about I went to a gastroenterologist. They did all the blood work on me as well and all this sort of stuff before that. They were trying to find out what else was wrong with me, what was going on with my body. So we were going to everybody and spent a lot of money doing it, and trying to just work out what was happening. And they found a 21 centimeter long rare precancerous tumor in my stomach, and they cut it out. And so if this event hadn't happened with with this UFO, this UAP, I wouldn't have found out about this precancerous tumor in my stomach, which would probably have killed me, within 2-3 years. So, so in a way, you kind of got to weigh it up a little bit. Like, was that trying to help me? Were they trying to help me, or what's going on? But because of that, what happened to me with that event, it kind of knocked me back a bit, and I kind of left the UFO field for a while because I actually got quite depressed because of it and got a bit down. I wanted to believe that these things were here to, just not help us, but observe us and just do their own thing. But the more cases that I started remembering old cases that I'd looked into years ago where UFOs have actually hurt people, and left radiation, sickness and all this kind of stuff on them and marks and everything like that. And that has happened multiple times throughout history. It's quite rare, but it has happened. There was a case in Colares, an island off Brazil, where UFOs, balls of light, were seen coming out of the jungles and attacking people with rays of light, and even through their homes, through their rooftops, these rays of light would project through the roof, through physical solid structures, and puncture the human inside the home. And this was happening multiple times. Multiple people died in this island off Brazil. Lots of people got quite sick over it as well. And they're all left with little radiation burns, basically. And they're all describing the same UFOs. And the doctor in the town believed that it was, kind of like a mass hysteria with all these patients coming in, talking about lights and stuff like this. But until she actually witnessed one of these UFOs herself on her way home from work. So then she started to believe that, oh yeah, well, there's definitely something to this phenomenon. It's pretty crazy, So yeah, I mean, there's cases like that, and there's other cases where they've made people sick, whether that's inadvertently, but cases like the Colares case seem more like it was on purpose, and that kind of cases like that kind of scare me a bit, because you kind of want them to be, people want them to be good and want them to help us, and that's what people expect. They're here to help us, but I don't think that's the case. I think it's more of an observation kind of thing with them. If they were going to help us, I don't know how they could help us. I think we have to help ourselves really at the end of the day,
Well, you know what? In the I always thought, they might be able to help us. They can give us technology, but at the same time, our minds probably can't comprehend how it works. So exactly. Also with that, they can't just give us nothing. So it's more of an observance to see like how we're going, which directions we're moving in, technology wise, you name it.
We're up. Yeah. There's a whole bunch of things.
Oh yeah.
What level to, how we're treating each other, the whole kit. Like they'd be looking down at us right now at the earth the way it is at the moment, just thinking, oh, what have we done? Like what's going on?
No kidding. Wait, well, the aliens are probably like, the earth is just fine. It's them people.
Hey, the world is not a bad place. It's the people that inhabit it, which are, make the world a bad place. It's not all people, obviously, but it's it's a pretty crazy place here, and for anybody. So if we're under observance, it would explain why they don't just come down and land every chance they get. If they do it on I mean, there's a couple of cases like the Westall case here in Australia where they've landed at schools, like the Ariel school encounter over in South Africa.
Oh, you know what? I don't mean to interrupt you again. I saw the other week a video interviews of the children at that school over in Africa. I forget where it was, but it was a school encounter. That was the most fascinating interviews I've seen.
Ariel school.
Yeah, they're just children. They're innocent. It's like they all have the same story. They're not just going to make this up, but you don't really hear about that story. But that really happened. I think that was in Zimbabwe, I believe.
Yep.
But that was just astonishing. Wow.
Yeah, Dr. John E. Mack went out and looked into that, and that was the case that convinced him. He was a very respected university man, and that was the case that convinced him to actually believe that UFOs do exist. Those children, and believing in what they said. So yeah, that was a pretty important case, and that's another part of the high strangeness. Some of the kids saw the aliens do certain things, and then other kids, there'd be a couple who saw them do something completely different. Now, that's something that happens time and time again with the high strangeness factor. I've seen it myself multiple times with groups and UFO groups I'll take out for sky watchers and stuff like that, and we'll see a UFO. There'll be eight out of the 10 people, or 7 out of the 10 who see it will see it do the same thing that, basically that it did. But then there'll be 3 people who either didn't see it at all, even though they're looking straight at it, or they saw it do something completely different, or they saw a different object altogether.
Yeah.
Which is really strange. And because I'll get people to draw out what they saw at the end of my sky watches, and then compare them later on. And it's about 3 out of every 10 to 2 to 3 out of every 10 will see something completely different than what you saw and what the majority saw, which is really bizarre.
Well, the thing I narrow it down to, it's almost like a crime scene where you have 20 witnesses. They all might have little bit different stories or recollections, but when you get to the heart of the matter, it's all has the same, they all have the same central piece to the story. About there was something here. Yeah, they all probably saw it differently as well, but the same theme is across the board. At least that's how I look at it. From witnesses and crimes.
Yeah, well, the human mind is fallible, and it can, change things. It can distort things. It can make up things. It can change little details without you even realizing. So it's a part of the reason why, hypnosis isn't fully accepted in every courthouse around the world, because of the human mind. It can create different things and whatnot. So it's it's a really strange case. With the Ariel case, I believe that the kids witnessed this an alien actually, or a couple of aliens, and one of them started. It was on the floor and it was sort of floating above the floor, so its feet weren't touching the ground, and it was coming at them, and then it would come at them to a certain point, and then it would just disappear and reappear back where it started, and then come back at them again.
Oh, it's weird.
This has been reported time and time again. And not just that case, but multiple cases where these things are floating above the ground, and it's almost like a time skip or some sort of strange jump that's happening that we can't explain because it's so out there. And if you were to tell just Joe Blow down the road, Uncle Joe down the corner about stuff, he'd be like, "Oh, you're crazy,"
Yeah.
But especially stuff like that, but. It's true. It's actually happened. I've experienced the high strangeness side of it that many times now. I know that's definitely is playing a factor in this, and it's like with John Keel with the Mothman prophecies. That goes into the high strangeness a lot of when this bird type creature was seen, flying over this town and with red eyes and doing all these things. There was UFOs also seen, balls of light. During the few months that it was happening. And also there was paranormal activity happening on the ground in people's homes. There was very strange electrical activity happening. There was very strange phone calls people were receiving, very strange poltergeist kind of activity happening in their homes, and on a big scale too. And as soon as this Mothman disappeared and the UFOs disappeared, the paranormal activity stopped on the ground. This has happened time and time again in multiple areas around the world. So it's part of the reason why in Haunted Skies I'm actually going into that. I'm touching on that side of the topic because it's not one that's looked at too often. Even with the Bigfoot hunters and the Bigfoot guys as well, a lot of them don't like to speak about the fact that, strange balls of light are seen around genuine sightings of Bigfoot. And that's happened. There's so many of them that report these balls of light seen around, the sightings of Bigfoot as well. It was a great case years ago where a bunch of kids were playing in their backyard, and their backyard backed onto a mini forest kind of thing, and big tall trees, and they witnessed a saucer, like a saucer type craft, come down, hover above the trees, then duck down into the trees in the forest area behind their home. And they watched it, and then all of a sudden out of the forest comes lumbering this big hairy 8 foot tall Bigfoot like creature staring at them. And then as soon as it saw the kids, it turned around and went back, and then all of a sudden this saucer type thing lifted up and took off, and it was gone. And so the sheriff who came and spoke with the kids, took them apart separately, got the same stories off them, said that at the end of interviewing all of them, said that these kids aren't lying. There's no way in the world they're lying. They're fearful. They saw something that was very strange. They all saw the same thing, down to like little details. And whatever it was genuinely scared them and freaked them out, and they're definitely not lying. And there's been many cases of UFOs seen around even Bigfoot, which is really, really bizarre. So a lot of people will talk about that in the field, and a lot won't, but I'm not afraid to touch on these
No,
subjects.
I think it's fantastic, Damien, because I always wonder if there's a correlation, because it's like you don't see Bigfoot all the time. That's why I was wondering, like, is he coming from another dimension as well, or somehow wrapped up in this whole UFO UAP deal? So that's a very important thing. I think that people need to hear and to start trying to connect some dots, at least when it comes to these experiences.
Well, open your mind up a little bit, that there may be something more to it than just aliens coming here from another planet. And so I think that these things are existing in this dark matter, or these alternate realities around us, or dimensions, whatever we want to call it. And they're definitely existing, and they're definitely coming out and on certain times. And that's part of the high strangers too, is the times when they come out and they appear. You might not see them for 2 to 3 months at some points, and then all of a sudden you'll have 3 or 4 days of seeing constant UFO sightings. And then but then you can't say, okay, like with a lot of other things that happen, on a sort of a timed basis around the world, these things, you can't predict them when they're going to come. And the US Air Force basically said that at the end of Project Blue Book, that, there's no pattern to them. It's sort of whenever they show up, they show up. So it's hard to really research and look into something that you can't know when it's going to come, if you know what I'm saying. So whereas like if you're researching the ocean's always there, but these things, they just come whenever they want to. And unfortunately, I've tried to correlate the times when they come, and it's different over different years. And some months do get more activity and sightings, like October, December, February, sometimes March. That does get a lot more sightings than other months. But, I've looked into solar activity, everything that I can, trying to work out, when they're coming and not why they're coming. Well, that we may learn down the track, who knows. But yeah, it's the when they're coming, and so I still have not been able to find a 100%, put it down to anything 100% that it's this or it's that that's causing them to come or to be seen. But the fact is that at the moment our magnetic sphere that's protecting the Earth and our magnetic fields are flipping and doing all sorts of crazy things, and there's strange geomagnetic storms above the Earth as well that we didn't even know about, and recently NASA scientists have been capturing these things and seeing them, like solar hurricanes and stuff like this, smashing our magnetic fields. So who knows if that has something to do with this, why we're seeing them more now as well. And so it's just so many questions, really.
Well, Damien, before I go into our last topic here, I just want you to think about something. This might warp your head. I don't know if you thought about this, but what if we're actually slipping into their dimension? Oh,
okay.
Oh.
That's I like that. Whoa, that's knocked me for 6.
That's a big one, I know. And then they're coming towards us because they're like, what is this thing? I've always thought about that. I think they're actually slipping into our dimension, but I always got to play devil's advocate saying, what if it's us that are going to them? But if that was the case, you would think we would start seeing them everywhere if we were slipping into their realm. But I think they're slipping into ours. No.
I think that's more the case that, they're coming to us, and we're lucky to see them every now and then. But the fact is that, look, we're coming into a new age. We're coming into a new time period on this earth. We're actually enlightened now in ways, and I think it's the internet's helping too, where people are accepting this more and more and more, which is a great thing, because for me, one of my main drives and my main passions growing up was to get people to accept what I was saying as a kid. It was real, and as a teenager and all this, and that I wasn't crazy, and that, because this phenomenon it's costed me friends, it's costed me family, just through to people thinking that you're crazy. And I get contacted by 10, 15, 20 people around the world every day who tell me stories that they can't even tell their own family or best friends.
Wow.
Because of the ridicule factor involved still. And so they've kept it a secret for years. So, and I love hearing that, because if I can offer any assistance or help or assistance that I never got growing up as a kid, I'd be happy just to do that, just to be an ear for people to talk to, to speak about their experiences and to be happy about it. And a lot of people, after they speak to me, they're very appreciative, because they can't tell anyone else, and it really affected their lives, their experience, what happened to them. So, I'm very happy and honored to be able to listen to people and have, that kind of thing where people understand that,
I'm a trustworthy person, and people can speak to me, and they know that their story stays with me, and that I can understand where they're coming from. So that's a great thing, and I think that eventually, it's going to be one of those things in the future that's going to be accepted as just a reality, and everyone's going to know about it, and that's great. I really hope that happens. Well,
you know what? I just wanted to tell you this. I watched a couple of your presentation videos on YouTube. Absolutely phenomenal. And while I don't know you personally, you can get a sense when someone is a serious person about a topic. Because watching you're the most professional speaker who just gives it as it is. And you say it how it is. And I think that's a big deal. Because when we see someone like that, such as yourself, talk about topics like this, it really brings to light, like, he's serious about this topic. It's almost like I was watching a TEDx talk when you were speaking, because your subject, and your information, and that's just absolutely phenomenal. So I got to give you kudos on that part. But one of the last things I wanted to mention, Damien, is going to be a big question. The importance of evidence, and how videos and photos play a big role, and how can we really tell the difference between CGI misidentifications and bona fide captures? And I know you got YouTube. Anybody can do anything nowadays. What is your take on this whole thing between CGI, bona fide captures, the real deal? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, us as ufologists and sky watchers and whatnot, we've got to deal with the modern era of fakery, and because of the internet, it's been great in some ways, but in other respects, the internet's been bad for fakering, it's gone throughout history, people faking Bigfoot sightings and UFO sightings and that. But now, unfortunately, we live in an age of technology and advancement where you can basically get a computer program which will create a UFO that looks real as anything, and put it out there and get 1 million views, and people think it's the real deal and whatnot. So we've got to put up with those guys and the fakers and the hoaxers, and they don't do anything for the UFO phenomenon at all, except for rubbish and ridicule it, because at the end of the day, when their sightings turn out to be fake or be proved to be fake, it's just, like I said earlier, it's just another nail in the coffin of ufology, and that's where people don't take this seriously, whereas they should. It's a very serious topic, if not the most serious topic in human history. Why are we here? It's something that all humans have asked at least once in their lives. I'd hope so. Why are we here? Why are we created? Who created us? There's so many questions that a lot of us have, that there's no actual answer to.
Yeah.
And I think that this is the ultimate answer as to either why we're here, who created us, or what we are. And I think that the UFO phenomenon or whatever, well, maybe it's hard to say because it doesn't really reveal much about itself. But at the end of the day, we can make our observations about the phenomenon, and then the fact. I think it would take, obviously, a extraterrestrial coming landing here and telling us all about our history and everything being filmed live around the world for people to, accept that, oh, okay, this is what we are or whatever. Unfortunately, there's so many guys out there in this field who claim they know the answers to what's happening. And unfortunately, these are the guys who are making lots of money off the phenomenon, off people, off people's bodies, off what people believe, So they'll create half a decent narrative and then start going off like that they're reptilians or they're from the Pleiades star system, and they contact them. And I always say to them, okay, well, if the aliens say they're from the Pleiades, why would they do that? Because Pleiades is a human name. That's a name that we've given their star system, not a planet they come from. They wouldn't say we come from
Pleiades.
Like if we land on, we come from the Pleiades, guys, even though it's your name for our planet or our solar system or whatever. It's just something they wouldn't say. It's like if we landed on an alien planet, we wouldn't say, oh, we're from the star system or we're from the solar system. We'd say, no, we're from Earth, right? Correct. So it always no one can answer that when I put that across to people. Like, why would they say that? It's a human term. It's not an alien term. So why are they lying to us and telling us that, you know, that we come from this place? They'd say, oh, we call ourselves, we come from here, but you guys call it Pleiades. That'd be more of a realistic kind of thing. Like, but no, it doesn't happen that way, unfortunately. So yeah, ufology's had to deal with just a lot of hoaxes, a lot of, you know, guys, you know, who are just here to make money, making stories up about, you know, working for government agencies, and being sent to Mars and having to do this and do that, and working at Area 51 as security guards. And unfortunately, all these guys get debunked, get found out as hoaxes, fakers, and at the end of the day, they all get, you know, and it's another nail in the coffin for ufology again. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of CGI, obviously, and all that kind of stuff, and hoaxes and fakers, and I'll go them whenever I can. But yeah, lately I've just been concentrating on my own work and trying to get these documentaries out there, and you know, and then getting some more truth and reality out there instead of fictional lies and rubbish that people and narratives that people want to spin about the topic. So I think it's very important the truth and gets out there, even though I may not know the truth. But the truth that we're not alone, that something else is happening around us, that's ultimate truth. There is something that's going on. People need to accept that first before they accept anything else.
Wow. You are absolutely correct, Damien. And I just want to verify one more time. So your up-and-coming documentaries are Fractured Realities and Haunted Skies, correct?
That's correct, yeah. You can find Fractured Realities Part 1. It's already on YouTube.
Okay.
And that's you'll have to probably go down a little bit. It kind of disappeared, which is really strange for a while, and it was hard to find. But it's in there somewhere if you look. But yeah, there's Australian Skies out there as well. I think you mentioned earlier that I may have directed it, but I didn't actually direct it. I starred in Australian Skies Part 1, but I think there's a Part 2 and Part 3 out there as well, of that tree. But I've got a few coming out this year. There's a Canadian documentary coming out. There's another American one coming out. I'm working on 2 with gentlemen here in Australia at the moment as well, and plus Haunted Skies as well. So it's going to be a big year leading up to in the next 6 months or so. So I'm really looking forward to getting these out there. And for me, I've always given away my stuff for free unless it's out of my hands. It's somewhat, because I believe this is a topic that people deserve to know, the reality, and they shouldn't be charged for it, because it's something that's going to affect all of us. And for me, a lot of what drives me is my pain through my life, through people not accepting me, through losing friends over this topic, people thinking you're crazy, and that, a lot of people just back down and then just pretend to be like everyone else. But I can't. I'm not like that. I'll fight until the day I die, because it's not about me. It's about people in the future and about being accepted, about other people not having their lives rubbished and ridiculed. I've heard some really tragic stories about people opening up to family and friends about this and being wiped out of the family because they think they've been taken by an extraterrestrial craft or something, or they've had experiences of lights and weird things, and people just think they're nuts, like naturally, and I mean, like we were saying, it has changed a bit nowadays. It's starting to become a bit more open and accepted, especially the UFO part of it. But back in the day, and still around certain countries around the world, it's still a tricky subject to navigate. So yeah, I'm just proud and happy that we're in a certain time era now where people seem to be accepting it more. I mean, it's a great thing.
No, most definitely it is. And I think we have a lot of interesting information coming up soon, hopefully, and within the coming years, because a lot more is coming out. So I'm really crossing my fingers that we get to the bottom of this. And it's individuals such as yourself that are doing all the heavy lifting. I mean, you're the ones actually out the forefront doing all the work and the research as much as you can, at least with all the information and the tools at your disposal. So I know that's very important. And the audience, the reason I'm glad you're on too, there's going to be a tons of listeners in our audience that have seen things or have encountered things such as yourself. And just listening to you, I really hope it gives them some relief and to at least come out about it, to speak up about it, or at least maybe reach out to you and just let the audience know we're going to have all your information down in the description, all your links, where you can pick up your documentaries. We're going to have everything below. So it's it's really important, Damien, and I really appreciate you joining us today. It's been an absolute honor.
Oh, it's been an honor being on your program and having an invite. So, and speaking to your audience. So thank you very much for listening, and thank you to your audience. You guys have been great. So,
not a problem. Hey, not a problem, Damien. And if I could just ask you to hold on for one moment, that'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Damien Knott, all the way from Australia. What a fantastic guest. I will tell you, Damien knows his stuff. And as you can tell, he's been doing his research quite a bit on UFOs and UAPs. And if you haven't, check out all of his information down below in the description. That's where you can find all the links to his documentaries, his videos, YouTube videos, and his Facebook pages. But until next time, I am Elijah, aka Mr. Cyber, from Mysterious Realms, and I will talk to you next time. Peace.